coming in the clouds. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Sounds like Jesus literally flying through the sky at the second coming, right? But when Jesus' original audience heard this phrase, they didn't think rapture or end of the world. They heard judgment, because coming in the clouds was ancient Jewish code for one thing: God bringing day of the Lord judgment through a foreign invading army. The pattern. Throughout the Old Testament, God uses cloud imagery to describe his presence in judgment. When judgment came to Egypt, Isaiah 19:1 declared, "Behold, the Lord rides upon a swift cloud and shall come into Egypt." Did God literally ride a cloud into Egypt? No. This is poetic language for divine judgment. When Babylon invaded Judah, Jeremiah 4:13 warned, "Look, he advances like the clouds, his chariots come like a whirlwind." The Targum, an ancient Jewish translation and commentary, interpreted this passage as the king with his army coming in judgment. This shows us how ancient Jews understood cloud language, not as literal meteorology, but as symbolic imagery for invading forces bringing God's wrath. In Psalm 18, King David writes that God came to his aid, surrounded with the thick clouds of the sky, verse 11, and darkness under his feet, verse 9, accompanied by hailstones and coals of fire, verse 13. The coals of fire should remind us of the cosmic destruction suffered by Sodom and Gomorrah. Even Psalm 104:3 describes God's way of operating. He makes the clouds his chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. Clouds represent God's power, presence, and judgment, not a literal chariot. Understanding the symbolism. In the ancient world, clouds had powerful meaning. Divine presence. God manifested to Israel in clouds, in the wilderness, at the tabernacle, and in the temple. Power and authority. Mortals don't walk among the clouds. Only deity does. Judgment and darkness. Clouds block the light, representing being cut off from God's grace. Invading armies. When prophets said God was coming in clouds, they meant the smoke of military conquest. Jesus uses the same language. In Matthew 24:30, Jesus said the tribes of the earth, literally land, referring to Israel, would see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Was Jesus talking about literally flying through the sky? No. He was using the same Old Testament judgment language, describing Jerusalem's destruction in 70 AD. Even more directly, in Matthew 26:64, Jesus told the high priest Caiaphas, "From now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." This is why Caiaphas tore his robes and shouted blasphemy. Jesus, who had repeatedly called himself the Son of Man, was claiming he would bring judgment just like the Father had throughout history. He was equating himself with God and threatening Caiaphas with divine wrath. And it came within that generation when Rome destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. What about Acts 1? Wait, you might rightly say. Didn't Jesus ascend into the clouds in Acts 1:9? And didn't the angels say he'd return in like manner? Yes. Acts 1:11 does promise Jesus' physical, literal return at his second coming. But here's what's critical to understand. Acts 1 is a different kind of statement than Matthew 24. Acts 1 describes Jesus' actual ascension and promises his actual return. Matthew 24 and 26 use Old Testament judgment imagery, the same symbolic language used throughout Scripture for historical judgments. Don't confuse the two. The second coming is real and future. But coming in the clouds passages aren't about that. They're about judgment events that, for us, have already happened. The New Testament continues the pattern. Peter, in Acts 2:20, quoted Joel's Day of the Lord prophecy, warning the Jewish people the clouds and darkness of judgment were approaching. Paul, in 1 Thessalonians 5:2 and 4, said, "The day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night. Then sudden destruction will come. But you, brethren, are not in darkness. And in Revelation 1:7, John declares, He is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. In context, the 70 AD judgment, when those who pierced him would witness God's wrath. The danger. When we misread coming in the clouds, we turn fulfilled prophecies into unfulfilled predictions. We scan the skies waiting for events that have already occurred in history. We miss Jesus' actual meaning. Jerusalem would fall within a generation. And it did. Seeing beyond the clouds. Understanding coming in the clouds changes a lot. It's judgment imagery. When prophets used cloud language, they were describing God's wrath over nations through invading armies, not predicting cosmic events. It happened repeatedly. Egypt fell, Babylon conquered, Jerusalem burned. Each time, Scripture used cloud language to describe God's judgment. History matters. Jesus' predictions were not postponed 2,000 years. They happened exactly when he promised, to the generation he addressed. Once you see this pattern, prophecy makes more sense, history pulls into sharper focus, and Jesus' words land with their fulfilled weight. Want to dig deeper into biblical prophecy? Check out the prophecy course, where biblical prophecy is made clear. Remember, it's the truth that sets you free.